Welcome back. So as you can see, this will start to be kind of polluted with a lot of validation code, and I don't want that to be inside my create function in the service. You could do that, that's okay, you'll just have a lot of code in here. Instead, what I want to do is I want to build a validator which only has the responsibility to validate the location, right? Now the cool thing with this validator is later on, if you want to, you can start doing some kind of intelligent superclass that can do basic validation and then subclass and stuff like that if you want to. But I'm doing test-driven development, so I'm going to write the production code that I need right now, and then later we can refactor the code to make it faster and easier to read, right? So the focus is to kind of get rid of this part right now and move all of this into our new validator. So I hope when I'm done, I'll get something saying like, I have a validator dot default validations or something like this. There we go, and then I can pass in the location. That's my goal, right? And I don't want to do this without test-driven development, right? So let's start out with doing some tests. And yes, I already prepared a small test right here. So let's just get rid of this for now. And let's try and go back to our location validator test right here. Now, here's the location validator test. And all I did was I created this new class. Let's just expand the Explorer again. I created a new folder actually called validators. There I have a new location validator test. And here I just added a simple fact for now that pretty much just says default validation with null location throws new parameter cannot be null exception. So let's just start by actually creating that default validator right here. Default, the location validator right here. Of course I need the name just like the test, this guy right here. And let's just call it validator for now, equals new location validator. And of course we don't have this, so we have to create it. Again, you have to do this test-driven. So let's see, where should we create this new class? Well, again, if I read the test, it needs to be in a directory called validators under the production code. Validators, there we go, under production code. I have the same directory now as in my test. And then I, of course, need to create a new class, which is pretty much just that validator right there. I didn't pick class. Let's try again. A new class, which is location validator. And there we go. I'll add it to GitHub. And now we have a new validator. Now I know that it seems I'm making so many small classes. And that's actually the point. I want to make things responsible for a small amount of work to make it easier to both work with it, refactor it, talk to others about what the validator does. It's very easy to explain. The validator's only job is to kind of validate the location in this case, right? So that's kind of the goal with these small, simple classes right here. So back to my validation test, and now I should actually be able to import this validator. There we go. Now we have a validator available. Now we can go and work with interfaces for the validator later. Don't worry about that. Let's not do that right now. Let's just make a simple location validator and then get back to interfaces later on. Okay, so the validator, right here in my test, it says the validator should have something called default validation, a method. So let's write that method right here. And let's just pass in null right now. And I'll just do it as a location again to kind of explain to my my code right here that I want that to be not a basic null, because then it'll just end up being an object, but I actually want it to be a location that I'm passing in as null, okay? So let's try and create this method. There we go. I'll create the method in the location validator. There we go. It's not implemented right now, but it's here. And then the next step is kind of to make the test so that I can actually now get an exception back, right? So let's try and jump back to the code and expand this. There we go. When I do this, it should actually throw an exception. So you have tried this before as well. So let's do either an assert throws. I can do that, or we can make this into an action. Let's do that instead. That was the one I worked with a few times now. So I'll make an action. I'll just call it action for now. That's going to be equal to this fat arrow notation right here to kind of convert it into an action. There we go. And now we can use action.should, right? Throw exception. And the exception should be parameter cannot be null exception. Now you probably recognize this because what I'm doing right here is the exact same thing that you guys did with the first unit test that we did, okay? So it should throw this exception right here. Let's try and run the code now. Run all tests. Now you'll notice something bad is happening. Boom, we have 3 failing tests now. Uh-oh. Well, that's of course because unit tests are protecting me. I'll get back to this, but the unit tests are actually protecting me right now because I just commented out some things in location service to prepare myself for the validation, right? But that of course breaks the other tests, so we'll have to fix that. Again, you have to think of this as an environment where you as developers have to make sure that all unit tests are running whenever you make a refactoring, a change to code that might affect other classes. So even though we made this validator and we're going to use it, everything fails right now. Let's just test this single thing in the validator. That also fails. Oh my God, now I have 4 failing tests. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to leave. I'm going to give up. No, we're going to fix it all. Going back to this one first, it doesn't throw the exception. Well, that makes perfect sense. If you guys go to the service, you'll see that to throw this exception right here, we actually had this small test right here. Let's actually jump into our validator now and add that small test in the default validator and just return this exception if that happens. Good, right? Let's try and go back now, run all tests. If you want to see that, there it is. You also pause the video every time, right? Let's go back to the test now and see if this solved my issue. Just run this test again. Whoops, not inspect. Let's just run it. Come on. Run. There we go. Now you see that test is actually running. So I fixed this test. But notice the cool thing here is, look how simple this test is, right? There's no creation of a service. There's no creation of a repository. I'm just testing right now that I can actually validate a null location and get an exception thrown. So again, look at how simple the test actually is to read, okay? But I know I made some other failing tests now, and next lesson we'll go and fix those. Before we do it, let's just fix the other parts of this so we have the same tests available with the new validator that we also had in the old code right here in the service. So I need all of these tests to be put in the validator right here. And of course I'm going to make a test for each of them. So let me just do that real quickly. So now we have 3 running tests down here and we have 3 failing tests right here. But that's because I kind of moved responsibility from the location service into the new validator that I built. And of course I haven't fixed the location service, so I know that that guy actually gets validated from somewhere, right? So we fail right now. It's okay. We'll keep it as failing test right now until the next lesson. I just want to kind of show you guys that now I've built these 3 tests and they are very easy to kind of read, and we'll make them easier again with helpers soon. But notice right here how simple they are. The first test is just, it has a location validator, of course, and then it just validates that if you send in null, you get this exception. Second test, if you have a validator again with a location with a blank name, then you get this exception, right? And the third one is kind of, if you have a validator with the name of A, you'll get this exception. Again, look at how simple they are. Now the final thing we need to do is kind of move this so that we actually start validating this new tests right here. We need to start using our create function to do the validation, but it'll be a lot easier to read that we just call a validator, because now the responsibility is not for the service. The responsibility of validating is now for the validator, right? So we'll fix that in the next lesson, but let's just keep these 3 errors right now. It's okay. Next lesson we'll fix them. That's it for this lesson. See you next time. Have fun.